Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Tuesday, July 2nd. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Akron game in 60 days, the game against Michigan in 151 days. This is the first day I am back from a weekend trip to Philadelphia. So you got a Ryan Day interview show yesterday, and today we're going to take a look back at some of the news that has happened while I was gone. We're doing that with my buddy Marc Givler of BuckeyeHuddle.com. Marc, first of all, let me just say, as a Mets fan, it brings me no joy to say this, but Citizens Bank Ballpark in your native town of Philadelphia, that is quite a nice ballpark. Good place to see a game.
It is. It's a really nice park. It's got great concessions. It's got good viewpoints. I've always enjoyed going there. And, you came in there and Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber were injured and haven't been seen since. So I don't know if you went Tanya Harding or something. I know how you like to sneak around in the back alleys of stadiums. So I don't know if that's up your doing or not, but not happy about it.
Yeah, I brought my Mets luck to Philadelphia and left it there. I did briefly look at going to the Mets game on Sunday. We couldn't make the schedule work out to get up there to New York from Philly. But just by looking at it, I caused them to take a 6-1 lead and blow it and lose to the Astros. So yes, my powers are great and vast. Be careful lest I curse your team by stepping foot on in their stadium or even thinking about going to a game in their stadium. All right. So enough baseball talk, and we may have a little hockey talk at the end if we have time to do a little Jackets chat at the end. This has been an eventful week for the Blue Jackets as well. But let's talk a little Ohio State football recruiting. It has been a very, very busy month of June for the Buckeyes. They started June with 12 commitments, which is, that's a decent-sized class. They brought in 9 commitments in the month of June, ending the month of June with 21 commitments. That's like the full-size class in some years for the Buckeyes. The work is not done this year, but here are the 9 guys in no particular order that they got commitments from in June: Zion Grady, Trajan Odom, Brody Lennon, Bodman Miller, Jake Cook, Isaiah West, Quincy Porter, Bo Jackson, Fahim Delane. Marc, I know we were anticipating, June, a lot of visits. You typically get a number of commitments. 9 commitments in a month. That is one of the biggest months I can remember a team having.
Yeah, I think we thought this would maybe spread out over July as well. I know Zion Grady initially was going to announce on July 4th and told me he couldn't even wait that long. He couldn't wait another week. He just wanted to get it over with, wanted to do it. So had some guys maybe pop a week or two earlier than maybe we thought. But yeah, I think we expected a very busy summer on the recruiting trail for Ohio State, and that's exactly what we're getting.
It was not all good news for the Buckeyes. The Oregon Ducks got a couple guys who the Buckeyes had been looking at pretty seriously, and at least one who they thought at various times was maybe basically in the class already. Dorian Brew, the 4 to 5 star corner, depending on who you want to ask, out of Texas via Northmont High School in Ohio, and Jordan Davison, the running back out of Mater Dei, both committed to Oregon. Neither of those are guys who are at positions of dire need by any means. Buckeyes have several players already at both of their positions this cycle. Was one of those maybe more surprising to you than the other?
Yeah, I think Dorian Brew was more surprising. I think and I thought for a while they were going to get Jordan Davison, but I think when they took Isaiah West and took the second running back, I think everyone had to realize that may not ultimately sit well with Jordan Davidson, and he may decide to go elsewhere and not be part of a 3-back class. With Brew, the Red Sea had kind of parted for him there. Blake Woodby decommitted. They really kind of put the full court press on him on his official visit last week, and things were sounding very good coming out of that. And to go even further, I don't think Oregon was the school they were worried about. I think it was Texas. So it kind of 180'd on him there with Brew. I think Jordan Davison, again, was kind of a product of, when they took Isaiah West and made it a 2-back class, you had to at least understand this was a possibility.
So that was kind of the news over the weekend, the news earlier in the month in some of those cases. So that sort of is where things stand now. Now, here's what's coming up next. Defensive line edge prospect, maybe outside linebacker, depending on how you want to categorize him. Jack. Justin Hill, he is set to commit on the 3rd. It feels like, this is already, Marc, a very deep defensive line class for Ohio State compared to some of the ones they've gotten in recent years. Adding Justin Hill would just make it even better. Is this is this a function of Ohio State maybe shifting its, approach in defensive line recruiting after a couple of years where they missed on some guys? Is this just, the having something to point to? Like, what are they selling this year that is working so well? And, do you feel like Justin Hill maybe is going to become a part of this class as well?
Well, first of all, yes, I do expect I do expect Ohio State to land Justin on Wednesday. I think they've been in the lead for a long time now, going back into the winter. So I'm expecting Ohio State to get good news there. As for why so much success there right now, I think it's twofold. I do think Larry Johnson got off to a faster start with guys in this class. I do think he sped things up a little bit. Now, he did have some established relationships as well. He was in very early on London Merritt. He was in very early on Zahir Mathis. Obviously, Ohio State was in very early on Justin Hill, assuming they get him on Wednesday. And, so Zion Grady was kind of the one guy that was kind of a whoa, moment there the last couple months. Wow, they can actually maybe get this guy, despite maybe not being super early on him. But so I think that's part of it. They got the ball rolling a little bit earlier. But again, when you have all these guys returning for their senior years that you didn't expect to, that you maybe thought you were going to lose 2 or 3 of these guys, they all come back. That means they have to get out of here after this year. And they only really signed Edric Houston last year as an edge guy. So you're looking at a situation now where if I'm a 5-star or a top 50 type of defensive end, I'm thinking I can play right away and maybe play quite a bit as a true freshman. And, that's obviously a huge, huge selling point that they're able to put out there right now.
So I mentioned earlier, they've got 21 commits already, number 1 class in the 247 composite, just a hair behind LSU in terms of average ranking per player, average star ranking per player. They are right at the top of the board by virtually any measure you'd want to use. But there is still work to do in the class of 2025. This is potentially, with all those guys leaving, you never know who's heading into the transfer portal. It feels like this could be a class that ends up much bigger than a typical Ohio State class. You might end up in the upper 20s, whether that's 28, 29, whatever the number is. Where is there still work to do in the 2025 cycle for the Buckeyes? I mean, they've got a very, very solid class already. Where do they still need to add to really get it to where they need it to be?
Well, I do think this is going to be a really big class, and at the risk of having said that a couple times in the past 10 years and it not coming to fruition and them not really utilizing the full 85 necessarily, I think, the Loch Ness Monster is going to appear, or the Tasmanian Tiger, or whatever mythical creature that we've predicted that we would eventually see out of Ohio State in terms of like a 28-man class is going to come to fruition. The work right now is primarily on the offensive line. There's also work at wide receiver to be done. And yes, they're going to want a third corner, whether that's continuing to chip away at Dorian Brew, even though he's committed, or whether, kind of opening up some new targets, whatever that may be. They're going to continue to search for a third corner. They would like to take a third linebacker. But I think the big emphasis right now is finishing out the offensive line and the defensive tackle position, which may not take that much longer. Trajan Odom was a huge get. I wasn't sure they would get him. He's from California. He lives in North Carolina. They had a lot of things working against him there. USC's class kind of fell apart on them, which I wasn't sure if that would be good or bad with Odom. It was probably, in hindsight, a good thing in terms of Ohio State getting Odom when he looked around and saw all these other big-time defensive linemen he was supposed to be playing with maybe there, heading elsewhere. So they got a little bit, they were on the right side of things with that. And so they've got one. I think they only need 2. I think they would take 3 if it was the right 3. And I think they're in good position with Maxwell Roy. I believe they've made the push for him now. We talked about this a couple weeks ago on the show about, getting the defensive tackle board settled and who they're going to push for and who they kind of figure they're not going to get and this, that, and the other. And so I think they've got a really good chance of getting Maxwell Roy here. So that could actually finish that off. So that brings you to the offensive line where they're still chasing Javen McFadden, and of course, David Sanders Jr. is the big fish, and he'll probably commit somewhere in August. So that's going to be a huge thing for them as we kind of go into the dead period here, is just making sure they're basically all in on David Sanders Jr. and doing everything they can to get that commitment in August.
So we will continue talking Buckeye recruiting throughout the month of July. Should be a very busy month. You typically do see more commitments during the month of July, and then, as you said, there's other guys who have said they're going to commit before the season. So the season starts relatively soon, especially on the high school side of things. So it could be much more action there. All right, before I let you go, we spend a lot of time talking Blue Jackets on the Huddle Board presented by Jeff Ruby's Steakhouse at BuckeyeHuddle.com. So I do want to get your thoughts on the Blue Jackets draft. There was some talk they might trade down. They did not trade down. Ended up picking at number 4. Your thoughts on the draft on the whole? I saw there was someone who had said to the new GM that it looked like they were drafting a basketball team because they kept going with size. Any thoughts on this year's draft?
Yeah, so I guess their choice was kind of Caden Lindstrom or Ivan Demidov, the Russian winger, and they have so many wings right now. I know there's a lot of people who maybe wanted them to take Demidov instead of Caden Lindstrom, but look, this is a franchise that hasn't had quality depth at center in its entire existence, and they've kind of fished with dynamite here the last couple of years. They draft Fantilli, that looks like a hit. They draft Sillinger, which at minimum looks like a bottom 6 center, and then Lindstrom's got a high upside to be a 1 or 2 center. And then they signed Sean Monahan in a first day of free agency, Johnny Gaudreau's old teammate. So, bottom line, I think they've done a pretty good job here filling the gaps and kind of building out that center depth. And they took a lot of big defensemen, which I think they sorely lack, some muscle on the back end there. So that's not going to help them probably for a couple of years. But I like where their thought process was at there. And we'll see. Monahan's not a guy you sign if you're, still in a rebuild mode. So it sounds like they're going to try and be competitive this year. And gosh, don't they have to get Johnny Gaudreau going? And if they're going to, wouldn't the best way to do that to be to bring in his old center from Calgary? And because if you don't get Johnny Gaudreau going, this franchise isn't going anywhere.
Yeah, that's definitely one piece that they're missing. The idea of the centers, you go back over the years, and it just feels like they have never been able to get centers consistently. And this is a league where good centers just don't move. It's just not that easy. It's not that easy to just throw a trade together for a center. So they have maybe found the one weird trick to load your roster with good young centers.
They don't move in, they move out because they've won the they have terrible draft lottery luck, but in terms of the luck involved in acquiring malcontent centers, they sure have that market cornered.
Yeah, well, we'll see. This is maybe something a little different. Trying if at first you don't succeed, if the first 20-something years don't go well, try something a little different. I'm filled with something. It's an unfamiliar feeling, Mark. It's like pessimism, but the opposite. It's so unfamiliar. I don't even know what the word is. We'll see. We will see how things go for the Blue Jackets. We'll be talking about that on the Huddle Board presented by Jeff Ruby's Steakhouse at BuckeyeHuddle.com. And of course, we'll be talking Buckeyes there as well. Lots to talk about there. If you're a baseball fan, hey, there is a team up in Cleveland that's having a pretty good season. We're talking about them. The Reds, well, they're also playing. I'm a Mets fan. I can't really talk too much smack about the Reds this year. But we were talking about all that stuff. Football, NFL season coming. We're talking football there, and of course, we are talking Ohio State recruiting, Ohio State, the season, all that stuff. New college football playoff, new college football video game. There's a ton to talk about this month. All at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That's where Tony, Kevin, and I cover the team. Mark covers recruiting. We're at our whole team of X's and O's gurus, making you a smarter football fan, all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. We hope to see you there. The Big Ten Media Days, just 3 weeks away. Can't believe it. 3 weeks from now, we will be in Indianapolis talking to Big Ten players and coaches. Season almost here. We hope to see you at BuckeyeHuddle.com to enjoy it all with us. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.